Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Conversations with Myself. I'm your host, Dylan Lang. This is Chapter 16 Decades. Let me explain some stuff real quick. For those who don't know, I do a show called Dylan Knows. I've been doing it for almost 13 years now. I do it every Saturday Night Live around 11 o'clock. Um, I have an episode for tomorrow, which also happens to be my birthday tomorrow, June 20th. Today, it's approximately 11:13 p.m. on June 19th, 2026. But since I've been doing this show, Dylan Knows, for 13 years, I've had some spinoffs, and one of them was the List Show, which I do periodically where I talk about lists. And this one is Conversations with Myself, which is something where I just take one look at one subject and just talk about it. It's only going to be about half hour to 45 minutes long, probably. That's how long these usually are. But this one is definitely unique. It has a connection to the List Show, but it's a little bit different. So here's the schedule I got. Today I'm going to do conversation with myself, chapter 16, Decades. And then tomorrow I will do episode 666 of Dylan Knows. Yes, the Mark of the Beast. So this is chapter 16 called Decades. And let me set the scene here for you before I get into it. I'm on Threads. I think Holodill is my name. You can look me up there if you want to, and then find me and hear what I have to say. But I was reading a thread maybe about earlier this week, like Monday or Tuesday, and someone posted, I like to, hear what other people's thoughts are about what their eras of their life are, and they asked, "What's your best decade?" That the most stuff or the best stuff or whatever happened to you. So it became sort of a think tank issue because I had very little to do at work. So I sat at work and I wrote down all the stuff I can think of. Tomorrow's my birthday. I was born June 20th, 1973, and I will be 53 tomorrow. So I was looking at that. So I'm looking at the window of 70s to the 20s. And immediately I didn't even think about the 70s because I missed 3 years of it anyway to begin with. And I was a baby and I couldn't tell you anything with the exception of one or two little things about the 70s that I remember. And in this case, decades are 0 to 9. So 70 to 79, 80 to 89, 90 to 99, 2000, 2009, 2010, 2019, 2020 to 2029. And that's where 2020 comes in handy too. 2020 has been a shitty decade so far, and we're about more than halfway through it, and it's still been shitty. And we still have 4 years left in it, so we'll see what happens. So I deleted that as well. So we're looking at the window of the 1980s, the 1990s, the 2000s, and the 2010s. So I take a look at those 4 decades, and I'm going to tell you which ones is the best for me and which one was the worst for me. This, since I did all my work pretty much at work, is this week's Dylan Knows stuff. As I said, I'm doing this tonight. Tomorrow I'm doing my regular show on my birthday, which I don't remember ever doing. But here we go. I'm opening this up and pulling out the proper Got it. There they are. That's it. Everything's there. Everything in here is tomorrow night's episode. So I will put that up there. And here are my 4 sheets of paper. Making sure. Okay. These are in the order from best to worst because I figured I'd rather talk about the best first and save the worst for last, so as not to, drag on stuff. This was a lot tougher than you think. I took a look at not just my personal stuff, but other stuff that was going on during the decade: politics, pop culture, sports, history, stuff like that. And I divide it in the good and the bad. So I'm going to detail both. My top two are so close, it's not even funny. But we'll talk about why that is. So, without further ado, so now here's the funny thing also. So after I wrote my answer on Threads, the guy deleted the whole thread. So I wasn't able to follow it anymore. So, or respond to it or see what other people said and see what they said. But he deleted it. So that's that. History's history. So maybe he was trying to get information from me and is going to try to, steal my stuff. But I'll tell you right now, all the stuff I wrote in the 90s about my best decade, which I just revealed, which I wasn't supposed to, has nothing to do with, passwords or anything like that to get into my account. So too bad. So yes, the best decade, again, very, very close, was the 1990s for me. And why is that? Here's the good about the 1990s. So we're looking at 1990 to 1999. It's in no order, and I just read it everywhere, and that's how I'm going to sort of read it. I graduated high school, class of 91, went to college, had a mostly good time at college, graduated college in 1995. I got my first ever real jobs. I'm not going to count some of the smaller jobs I had after I graduated until I got my first real job was I was a bagel baker for a brand new bagel company that just opened up in 96, January 96. And I started working there in December. I had to get trained up on it. And I didn't start off as a bagel baker. I started off as just a bagel guy who would pull bagels or make bagel sandwiches. But when he lost the bagel bakers and they saw that I was there all the time, they said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" So had to shift some gears a little bit. And we'll talk a little bit about this, about the bad parts of the 90s. But I did my due diligence, and I worked there from winter, like December 95 to October 97. So not very long, but I did a little bit though. So that was my first real job. Then after 97, after I left that in October, I got a seasonal job working at the See's Candies, what do you call it? See's Candies kiosk at Towson Town Center for the holidays. So I spent my Christmas at the mall. And sort of because I was there all the time and I was responsible, I sort of became a manager. They had me closing a lot because they trusted me to count the money and not steal it and put everything in the safe and set up things early and stuff like that. So that was interesting as well. And then after that, since it was seasonal, I needed a job in 98 after I was done with it. And it took me a little while, but eventually would start off as a part-time job for radio station WLIF 101.9 FM here in Baltimore. It's WLIF 102 is what they call it. But it was 101.9 Light FM. And what was it? It was not marketing guy, but it was a guy, promotions. I was a promotions person. So at the time in the 90s, radio stations were a lot different than they are now. They actually had DJs that had shifts, a morning shift, early afternoon shift, drive time, and then the prime time at 8 o'clock midnight, and then the overnights they had. So they had actually a live person doing radio 24/7 on there, and they became, they got their own sort of personalities, and people like them, and they, people like talking to them and can make requests and stuff like that. So our promotions department we would go to different areas around the area, be it grocery stores, jewelry stores, not restaurants, like Costco, Walmart, BJ's, Sam's Club sort of places as well, because they were just starting to come around as well. And we would promote the radio station. We'd have our prize wheel, and and you could win prizes. And we had pictures of all of our personalities, and sometimes the personalities were there. They would sign stuff and talk to people. We made stockings at Christmas time. We gave out poinsettias at Christmas time. We gave away pumpkins at Halloween. And we gave away free ice cream popsicles on a hot summer day once. So originally it was supposed to be a part-time job because I didn't have any other job, and there was a lot of other events going on. Oh, movie premieres, which I did all the time also. They made me kind of a full-time staff or promotions person. So I did that for most of 98 into 99. And then it wasn't paying well. And then I wanted to make more money because I had just bought my first car in 99, which is another pro for the 90s. I got a job at Rainforest Cafe because it had just opened in 1999 at Towson Town Center. I was the first person they hired for the gift shop, and ended up being, by the time I left, one of only two people, the originals who were hired. My friend Ellen, who became manager, and I was her de facto assistant manager, was also in charge of our warehouse, which was basically just a closet. Well, it was bigger than a closet, but it was in charge of that. But that was fun. And we were above TGI Fridays. So when we were closed down, we would go down TGI Fridays. We'd drink a little bit. So that was fun. And we were all in our early 20s. So that was fun. And so I had those jobs in the 1990s. And I still worked at the radio station, moved it to a part-time position. Once I got this full-time position at Rainforest Cafe, I would work on the weekends for the radio station. So I would never get assigned a weekend job at the mall because we had a lot of like college and high school kids who couldn't work during the day anyway. The mall was open. So we always had them put in on the weekends anyway. And it's the busiest time for us. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we did that. Excuse me. So as I mentioned, I got my first car. And there's a bad part to that also. We'll get that in a second. That was in 99 also. That's interesting. My mom got remarried. She, at the beginning of the 90s, she was divorcing my dad, and they were separated. And my dad was married to my first stepmother. And my dad divorced my first stepmother in the mid-90s. And my mom was seeing somebody in the early 90s, but that fizzled after a while. So she eventually was just free for a while, but then she met somebody around 95. They got together and got married. That was my stepdad, Roger, who passed away of cancer back in 2019, I think. But she got remarried in 96, so that was nice. And then I talked about my dad, his stuff. He actually did end up meeting the woman who would become his current wife, my second stepmom. They did not get married till the late aughts, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So that's kind of interesting. So that was going on about that. One of my favorite activities was at that time in the 90s, around 95, 94, they opened a 4-story Borders bookstore in the middle of Towson, right near the Towson Town Center Mall. And that was my hangout because it was all part of the Towson Commons building. So you had the 4-story Borders, and then you had the next level up was the movie theater. It was an 8-movie theater thing. And then up higher was the offices where the radio station actually was located also. There was also a food court in there as well, and some other shops, but the shops really didn't last too long. But the movie theater did, and the offices. And then eventually the radio station moved to another office in the aughts, and that's when I stepped away from that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I love the 4-story Borders. The basement was the biggest CD store I'd ever seen before. Had every CD under the sun you could think of. They brought bands in to play, famous bands. They Might Be Giants played there once. And they had all these cool stations where you could listen to music and see if you wanted to get buy the CD. They had a soundtrack section, which was my big musical taste at the time, so I got to listen to all that as well. And you walk up the steps and you were in the Borders. The main level, street level, was the cash wrap, was the magazine stands, which was huge, was the big print books for the older people so they could read a little bit better. Then there was up another little level you took in the middle of the first floor, which had the sci-fi and fantasy books and stuff like that. And then you go up to the next floor. That was where their coffee stand was. And another cash wrap, and then more of like the business stuff and school stuff and stuff like that. And then you had the next little mini floor up, which was the kids section, and then they had a nice bathroom at the top also as well. So that was really nice. I know there's like a 3-story Barnes and Noble or Borders, I guess, but it was still really, really nice. It was my hangout because I didn't have a car till '99, so I had to make my way by getting on buses or walking up to Towson when I wanted to get away from stuff or just go out a little bit. So that was fun. That was my hangout. I love that. Actually went on a blind date there once. Actually went to the bar nearby, and then we went to Borders and just looked around. Nothing amounted to anything with that one. Couldn't even tell you her name. Got back into comic books at that time because there was a comic book store at Towson Commons, and then it closed down. But then one opened up at Towson Town Center just before Rainforest Cafe opened up. So I was up there for a little bit. And then when Rainforest Cafe opened up, I think it disappeared and moved closer to across the street now from the Borders. So if I wanted to go to the comic shop now, I could just cross the street, and there it was right there. So that was cool on top of that as well. So I got back into comic books then, because what got me back into comics was DC versus Marvel. They finally did that and then like 95, 96, and that got me back into comics because I had taken a sabbatical. I was at college away from comics, so that was fun too. All this still in the 90s. There was lots of good music. Grudge came out. Good pop music with like Counting Crows and Live and Toad the Wet Sprocket and stuff like that. And so that was a lot of fun. MTV still played videos. They also started the Reality World with the Real World that started in the early 90s as well. And I watched that religiously for the first 4 seasons, and then I stopped watching that. So that was in the 90s as well. So that was I'll put that in as part of the good as well. Good movies, though. There was one time that I went to see 51 movies in 1 year. Almost, I should have gone. I was trying to force myself to go to get 52 at the end of December, but it was a brutally cold holiday season, and I just did not feel like it. And this is when I was working at the bagel shop. It was in 96. And the way my bagel shop worked when I was the bagel baker, my shift started at 3:30 in the morning. And so I was usually done, particularly on slow days, by 10:30. So I had my whole afternoon free, even though I had to go to bed by 8 o'clock to get enough sleep because I had to get up at 3 o'clock. So by that point, I was still living at home, which was another plus on that. I didn't have to pay rent, but I paid for cable and paid a portion of the electrical and paid for my own groceries and for groceries for everybody. And whatever else they needed, I gave them my they needed. But I never actually had to pay physical rent to them, which was great. Had my own room and had my own TV and VCR, so I watched lots of movies when I was in bed. After I went to bed, I didn't go to bed quite right away, so I'd put a movie in and sit there in bed and watch a movie. Sometimes I'd fall asleep. Sometimes I watch the whole movie through and then eject it and go to sleep then. So it's just a way to come down from the day or whatever. But what I would do is there was a bus stop at the top of my street. So I would walk to the top of the street, hop the bus, and take it all the way up to, it would take me right to Borders, then get on the Borders, and then go upstairs to the movie theater, go to the movies. So those had 8 movie screens. So I had my choice, and I went every Friday. If there was a movie I wanted to see, I would go see. If there were 2 movies I wanted to see that came out that day, I would see them both, usually at the same time. And sometimes also I would walk. It was only about a 30-minute walk from my house up there. And it was nice, gave me a chance to clear my head, come up with some ideas, and just think about stuff. So that was a lot of fun. And so there were a lot of good movies in the 90s as well. Going back to college, had my first real relationship in college. It took me a long time. I didn't have my first real relationship till I was 21 years old. It was my senior year of college. It was with a sophomore, 2 years younger than I was. We lost our virginity to each other on Halloween, 1994. We only were together for about 4 months, but it was a real relationship. I was having sex. And we were together. No, it was like a real relationship, which was good. Fast forward to, I guess 96 again was a good year also. 96, there was this girl who was working at the bagel shop with us. And I was having a bad day one day. It was a Sunday or something like that. And we had a refrigerator and a freezer in the baking area. And she went in the refrigerator to get something. And I just happened to go at the same time. And we looked at each other and we just started making out. And they're like, okay, it was just I guess, because she was under pressure too. So just sort of like a release of pressure. It's like, okay. I didn't think much about it. But I that night when I came back home, I dreamt about, doing stuff to her. It was a good dream. And then literally the next day I had off and I was going to walk up to the bank to deposit my check. And as I was walking down the alley, just leaving my house, I walked down the alley towards the bank. She pulls up in her car and I get in and I take her back to my house and we do things, do stuff, fool around sexually. Yes. Yeah, I know you get it. Yeah. So I had a summer fling that lasted only about 3 months. But it was, and I felt really bad because I think I screwed up. It was great early on, and then I just sort of got bored with it, I guess. And I wish I hadn't, because I wish I would have, stuck with it and got a little bit more of my sexual energy out. But okay. I also just remember this too. As I said, this is all scattered, so this is covering the whole decade of 90 to 99. It wasn't a real job. These were all real jobs that I had that was full time. I was working Monday through Friday. I didn't have to go to school. It wasn't a part-time school job. I had part-time school jobs in the early 90s. And that big one was I was working at the grocery store, the A&P up in Towson. Towson's a big deal because it's within walking distance and on the bus line. And my dad and mom would take me to it as well. So I worked at the A&P. I was a cashier and also worked in the produce section and worked frozen food once. What was awesome is one of my best friends from high school, Andy, he also worked at the grocery store. So we were able to hang out and work together sometimes. So that was fun time. So that was good time. So I did that also in the 90s. So that was good. 1996, the Baltimore Ravens football team began their career in Baltimore. And I was a fan right away. They played at Memorial Stadium for the first 2 years, I guess. And then they opened up their new stadium in 98, just when I started working at the radio station. And the radio station was the voice of the Ravens at that time. So I would go to every home game. Now, I wouldn't go into the stadium to watch the game. We had tent parties on the outside, but it was game day. We were there at 7 a.m. on Sunday, game day, and there was a party where people who were going to the stadium were going in there. And it had, Ruth Chris Steakhouse was the caterer for that. And we had, big time people coming in there. I had Jim Palmer and we had Johnny Unitas and a bunch of other people. And there was one time where we were playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs was in the tent party right next to us, so we could see him as well. Brian Billick was the coach at that time, and the Ravens were starting their upward trajectory. And we saw him walking by all the time. So we're like, have a good game, coach. He's like, thank you. So that was kind of cool. Cheerleaders came in with the mascots every once in a while to just chill out. So that was fine too. So we did that. And then occasionally I got maybe a ticket here and there to a game. That was kind of fun, but most of the times I didn't. But my dad wanted to take me to some games. So we went to a couple, not many at Memorial Stadium. I think we only went to one at Memorial Stadium. And we really didn't get into going to Ravens games regularly until the aughts. But no, that was 2000. Never mind. Till the aughts. We'll talk about that in a second. The Baltimore Orioles, our baseball team, in the early 90s, we had that stellar year in 89, and we were okay in 90 and 91. And then in 91, we closed out Memorial Stadium. And in 92, we went into Camden Yards. That was when Camden Yards opened. And that was a big deal. I got to go to the last game at Memorial Stadium ever. And after the game was over, the Orioles lost. And they brought out all the living Orioles to the Field of Dreams music and the speech. And that was great. And that was quite an experience. My dad had come up to get me from college because I was a freshman there. when it happened. So I got to see that. And then Camden Yards opened in 92, and they were decent for most of the 90s. They had a really hot spot in like 96 to 98. They were really, really good, making it to the playoffs a couple times, but never going much further. In fact, one of those years they went wire to wire, but they were in first place the whole season. But then they got bounced after the first playoff game series or second playoff series, something like that. So we didn't make the World Series that year. But that was good. So that was, and then in 93, I got another summer job working at the Diamond Comics warehouse that was in Baltimore, which isn't there anymore. And it actually, when I went to work for Diamond at the aughts, they hadn't had that warehouse there for a while, but in 93 they had it. It was a summer job. I was able to get it. And that was an interesting job. And it actually is in a location near to where I'm working now, which is really, really funny too. So it all comes back around, doesn't it? I mention this because sometimes my sister would let me borrow her car because she was still kind of living at home at the time as well. And this was 92, 93. And every Tuesday night we had to work late because that was when the new comics came in. We had to get ready by Wednesday so that we could ship out everything early Wednesday or on Tuesday so that the places, the comic shops in the area that we serviced would get their comics on Wednesday when it was New Comic Day. So we had to work through the night for that. So in 93, the Orioles and Camden Yards in its second year hosted the All-Star game, which we haven't done since. And I remember driving home on All-Star game in mid-July, and I could see all the hubbub as I was driving home. It was wrapping up, but I could see all the hubbub. It was really cool because I was driving nearby it, so that was really neat. The Democrats had taken control of the government in 92. Bill Clinton won the election in 92 and took over officially in 93, where he was president until January 6, 2001, officially. And it was the first time I ever voted also because I turned old enough to vote, and I was able, my first election I ever voted in was in the presidential election of 92. Had to get an absentee ballot or a write-in or a mail-in ballot, whatever you want to call it nowadays, because I was at college at the time, so I couldn't make it back to put my vote at my polling place. So I did that. I voted for Clinton, and Clinton was a very good president after suffering 12 years of Reaganomics. Clinton came in and sort of cleaned up everything. The Dems were in control of a lot of stuff, and the 90s seemed pretty good. There was some, bad stuff that did happen, obviously, but the majority of stuff I felt fairly safe, and I felt fairly good about living in the 90s. Because the USSR, we won the Cold War. The USSR gave up in the early 90s, and China also is having some changes for their stuff as well. So that was a big deal. So the Dems in charge and everything was great. That was fine. The budget was balanced for the first time ever, and it got unbalanced when we entered the Iraq-Afghanistan wars in the aughts. But so that was kind of good. DVDs started making their debut. Up to that point, it was videotapes, and I had a whole collection of those. And then DVDs, I got my first DVD player, I believe, in 97 or 98. And my first Blu-rays, not Blu-rays, they were regular DVDs I got Dante's Peak, and I got the Best of Eddie Murphy on Saturday Night Live, and there was one other one I can't remember. I got the Dragon's Lair video game, which they had on the DVD, which you could play it on your TV, which was cool. So that was a big deal. I worked on warehouse. 93 was also a pretty big year. My sister got married in 93 to my brother-in-law. They're still together now. And that was interesting. I was at college at the time, They got married in November, and so I came down early. My brother-in-law had his bachelor party the Thursday before his wedding on Saturday, and so he didn't want to get too wasted for the rehearsal on Friday. So I sort of helped him by his friends kept trying to get him drunk and get him drinks. He gave them to me, and I did them, and I actually got the sickest I've ever been, I think, ever from alcohol, and spent the whole weekend at home in a daze, including my sister's wedding. I was better on that day, but the rehearsal and the stuff leading up to it was terrible. It was a bitter cold November day, and it was rough, and it was hard. It was just crazy and busy, and then the wedding itself was fine, but it was crazy, and I had to go back to school, and then luckily I was only there for about 3 days, and I got picked up again because Thanksgiving break happened, so that was interesting. And since they got married in 93, I became an uncle in 97, 4 years later, when my nephew was born, their firstborn. And so that was good. I was there for the birth in Virginia, so which is where they were living at the time. So I became an uncle for the first time in the 1990s also. One of my biggest crushes, and still to this day, is still kind of crush, not as big as it used to be, but still up there, is Sarah Michelle Gellar. And a big reason why is because of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV show, which was big in the late 90s as well. And also the whole just teens in general with the Jennifer Love Hewitts and the Freddie Prinze Jr.'s, and the like, and the rise of the teen movies, the Nev Campbell's, the rise of the teen movies with 1996's Scream, and I know she did Last Summer, and then you had Cruel Intentions, and you had the American Pie movies, and then you had Buffy in there as well, who was on TV kicking ass as well, and became huge. So teens were a huge deal in the late 90s, and that was cool to see that. That was also the rise of Maxim magazine, which at that time, I was in my early 20s, was one of these, not quite, it wasn't Playboy because there's no nudity, but it was taking a look at these young stars who, they were playing teenagers, but they were all within my age range as well. And lots of, sensual pictures and really good looking pictures of it. So I cut lots of pictures out of them and stuck it up on my walls. Yes, at the age of 20, whatever, I was doing that. But Maxim magazine was a good one to look, because it also did, sex talk and stuff like that. So it was like it was like Cosmo for men. For the most part, so that was good. So when I was also working at the bagel shop, I worked on the weekends, so I still had to have 2 days off. So I got 2 days off during the week. It was usually concurrent, like either Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday sort of things. And sometimes it was like Tuesday and Thursday, but I tried as best I could to get concurrent ones. And when that case came up, when I had like basically kind of a weekend, I would take a cab or the bus down to Union Station downtown Baltimore, get on a train and go to DC and pop into a hotel and just stay in a hotel for the weekend and explore Washington, DC, go to Smithsonian, go to the monuments, and just, walk around and just imbibe stuff. I only did it a couple times, but I still did do it. And that was in the 90s. That was kind of nice to go through with that. Back in the early 90s, as I was telling you, my dad was married to his first wife, and his first wife, my first stepmother, I should say, his second wife. She was friends with a travel agent, and so they were able to get really good deals on trips all over the world. My dad was never really a guy who went on trips like that, but he did for my first stepmom, and so he wanted to share that with me and my sister. So we never went to any like really cool foreign places, but we did stuff with the United States. We went to Boston once. We flew out to California once. But I do remember in the early 90s, we did a fun trip where we flew to Colorado, did Denver. Then my dad rented a car. We drove up to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and did Grand Teton National Park and Yellowstone National Park, and then drove back to Boulder, Colorado, where my first stepmom had a friend, and we stayed at his really nice house for a day and looked around Boulder, which was really cool. And then we took the flight out of Denver back to Baltimore. So That was fun. We had taken a really good trip in the late 80s where we flew to Seattle. We did Seattle, went up to Canada because you could just cross the border and you didn't need any ID or anything like that. And then did Vancouver, British Columbia, and Victoria Island. Drove down through Oregon, stayed at a few places around Oregon and Lower Washington State, saw Mount St. Helens, and then we ended up in San Francisco, spent a few days in San Francisco, then flew back home from there. We did that in the 80s, though, but so these trips were kind of regular ones. So the last one, major one that I remember doing was this one to Colorado. Did that in the early 90s. Drank my first ever alcoholic beverages before I was supposed to. I did it my freshman year when I was only 18/19, but I did go to some of the frat parties at the apartments off campus. Had my first ever hangovers. But yeah, had my first alcoholic beverages then. Worked in theater, both in high school and in college in the late 90s. 90... we did Comedy of Errors in 91. We did Christmas Carol. Right? No, it was 89 did we do? No, 89 we did Comedy of Errors. 90 was Christmas Carol. So I did a Christmas Carol in 1990 for high school, which was the fall of my senior year. And then went to college, and at college we did 4 shows instead of 2. And I got cast in the third of 4 shows, Love for Love, which was an amazing experience. So I did that in the early 90s as well. Had an amazing experience, made a lot of good friends, and had a great time. And then was supposed to do Medea at the 4th one, got cast in that, but I screwed that up and got fired from the job. My friend Devin got the job. So, but I became a member of the Domino Players, which is our theater group. And so I did theater in 92, skipped 93 and did 94. I did a couple in 94, 95. So theater was a lot of fun. I met my friend Rob during the making of Love for Love my freshman year. And he and Bill, who also was a friend of mine also, they were friends already because they were a year ahead of me. Well, Bill was 2 or 3 years ahead of me anyway. I think he was the same age as my sister, so I think he was 3 years ahead of me. But not Bill. Oh God, I just said his name too. Rob. Thank you. Rob was only a year older than I was, so they had been friends anyway because they'd done theater together his previous year. So they were friends, and they went to a place called Temple Diner, which was a nearby diner there. And I remember distinctly, Rob's Jewish, and one of the first times doing Love for Love rehearsals, after rehearsals, like 10 o'clock at night or whatever, he came up to me and said, "Hey, do you want to go to Temple?" And I thought he meant Jewish Temple. So like, no, I'm not Jewish. He's like, no, it's a diner. I was like, oh yeah, sure. So we went to the diner, we did Temple Run, and it was great. It was a waitress there who knew them. They always ordered coffee and something else like pie or something. I ordered usually a bacon grilled cheese sandwich and hot chocolate. So at that time, I didn't like coffee. I was just hung out for a couple hours at the diner, just chit-chatting, and the waitress was really kind. She knew us. And then we left, and then we started doing Temple runs almost every day. We would he'd call up at like 10 o'clock, 11, we'll go to Temple. Sometimes I'd say, I can't make it. I got to do it. So other times I said, hell yeah, I would go. So they would go, and we'd go to Temple. They'd drive us there. So I went to Temple more times than I can recall, but that was fun. And I was working at the cafeteria, so I was making money. So I was also doing that in the 90s too. A lot of the stuff is college related because in high school I only had that 90 was the spring semester of my junior year, the fall semester of my senior year, and then the spring semester of my senior year. So I only did about 3 semesters of high school in the 90s. So there really wasn't, and I didn't have a lot of friends till my senior year, and that was another part. So I guess I'll skip around a little bit at this. I made a lot of good friends my senior year of high school. They were all kids who were younger than me, and we had a little group, and we gathered together at my friend Matt's house, and that was fun for a while. Then things got just a little messy with certain things, relationship dramas and stuff like that, but still it was a fun time for a while. Matt lives in Stoneleigh, not far from where I was. so I could walk to his house. And we did lots of walks and talks and stuff like that. So, and then there was a girl I was interested in as well in that group, and we tangoed for about a week maybe, and then it didn't pan out. That's why she was my first real relationship and my first one until college. So college is definitely majority of my it was the majority of my year. I mean, the fall semester of 91 through the spring semester of 95, that was my college life. So that's a long stretch that I spent in college. So, and I did a lot of stuff there because college you have a lot more freedom than you do in high school because you're self-contained. Everything is on campus. You have friends that have cars and you're able to do stuff with the cars. So a lot of my stuff is going to be college stuff. So I'm going to go on a spiel about college stuff here real quick. We had something called Spring Fever Weekend, which we did every year. It was like April, and it was a weekend where it was just nonstop parties and events and stuff like that. We were able to get some biggish sort of things. The Gin Blossoms, who had just come on the scene in the early 90s, were about a year into their career, and that people liked them. We got them to come and perform a concert at our place. We had Chris Rock do stand up before he was Chris Rock. He was shitty, by the way. And then my sister and brother-in-law, because they also went to the same college I did, one of their Spring Fever weekends in the 80s was they had Dana Carvey and Mike Myers do stand up as well. So that was interesting for them. So we did that, but it was a big nonstop party. And then one thing that they always did was on Saturday morning at 10 a.m., they did ooze ball, which is volleyball in the mud. So we'd go up to the senior apartments, and it was a big deal. The cafeteria staff went on site to do the breakfast. So we did breakfast up at the ooze ball site. And so it was an ooze ball competition. So it was volleyball in the mud, and you got a team together and you played volleyball, and it was a single elimination. So as soon as you lost the game, you were out. And then, eventually they crown a winner. And so that was a lot of fun. It was messy. I played in 2 years of ooze ball, I think. Maybe 3. No, we didn't do it senior year because they were living off campus with them. So about 2 years we did ooze ball. And then I worked, I think, the other ooze ball event. So that was a lot of fun. I had a fling before my real relationship, my senior year of college, 94 to 95. I had a fling from sophomore year. It was 92, fall of 92 to fall of 93. And it really wasn't really much. She didn't want to have physical penetration, so I never had. So that's why I was still a virgin in 94. We lost my virginity to my girlfriend at the time, and on Halloween. She didn't want she didn't have penetration, but she went down on me, and I got to go whole hog on up here for her. And then we did simulated stuff where I was completely naked and she had her panties on, but she was topless. And it would be like we were fucking, but I was grinding on her, and she came, and I would come sometimes too. And that was really all we did. It really wasn't a big deal. We weren't dating or anything like that. It was just we wanted to release some sexual tension or exercise or whatever. We did that. And I remember it was great. We had a Christmas dance. So it's like last week before finals, stuff like that. We had a Christmas dance. And that one night, she said she wanted to spend the night in my dorm room. I was like, that's cool. And at that time, my dorm room, I was supposed to have a roommate, but he dropped out before the beginning of my sophomore year. So I didn't have a roommate all of my sophomore year. I got one in the spring semester. So I had my own room to myself, but I had 2 beds in there. So we put the 2 beds together, and we went to the dance together, and then we did a lot of fooling around, but again, didn't do any penetration. And then we slept together. Again, not sexually, but we slept together, and then just had a nice morning, and that was just nice. And then our January mini-mester hit, and I was busy with my theater project, and I didn't really have time for flings. And she ended up telling me at the beginning of the January mini-mester that she had kissed somebody else at a party. At that time, it didn't really bother me, but she was coming around a lot, and I was too busy. And so I put on a faux disgust thing, and I was like, oh, whatever. And I just got focused on my. This is because I was a terrible asshole at that time. Got focused on my theater stuff, and then she came at near the end of our semester of the mini semester drunk, and she wanted to keep apologizing and said, "What can I do to make us feel better?" And I didn't want to have sex because I knew she didn't want to do that. But I said, "I want to go down on you," because she never let me do that. So I got to go down on my first person ever then. And then that was it. And then we didn't. We just sort of kind of drifted away a little bit for the first couple of weeks of the spring semester, but then she sort of came back around and we started up again. But I had a roommate, so we had to be a bit more discreet about it. And then the semester ended, and then we began my junior year in the fall semester, and we hooked up together one more time. And then she got a boyfriend. So, but then it was great though. My senior year, we did our senior week, and I had just gotten broken up, and I was still not quite fully recovered. We had a nice moment together where we just sort of were able to, I don't know, come to a conclusion. I don't know. So that was good. Senior week was a lot of fun because we did all our exams the week before the underclassmen did. And then when they were doing their exams was our senior week. So we got to go to restaurants and different things. We went to a shish kebab restaurant. I got to try snake and shark and buffalo and stuff like that. That was kind of cool. And then we had alcohol because we were all 21 at that time. We went to a bar also, which was nice. And then we had our pub crawl, which was, we were on 13th Street, 11th Street in Reading was a huge bar thing. There was like tons of bars on it. So we had like 10 or 12 bars that you go in and get a shot for free and move to the next one. Or if you wanted to just hang about that bar, you could. And it went from the furthest away from the college to the closest to the college. So we walked it and then like that. And then that was a Friday. That Saturday, all the underclassmen had moved out, so we were just waiting for graduation. We went to see Die Hard with a Vengeance, and then we graduated that Sunday, and my college career was over. So that was good. In high school, I played badminton for the 3 semesters that I was there for. That was a lot of fun. The Mars rovers, I think, landed on Mars at that time. We started getting stuff from there. I stood up to my bullies and had a better year than I thought I would. Learned to drive that in the 90s as well, and got my first car. Cal Ripken broke his Lou Gehrig streak for most games played without a break, most straight games played. Friends came out on TV. After my parents separated and then my dad sort of got away from his first stepmom, my vacations consisted of going to Ocean City, Maryland, and staying on 94th Street at a really nice place and doing stuff there. Northern Exposure, one of my favorite shows of all time, came out at that time, as did Twin Peaks, which is why I'm wearing this shirt. Came out as well. I became a fan of REM in the early 90s because they were the hottest thing going on in the in the 90s. One of my favorite shows I watched with my dad, Briscoe County Jr., also came out in the 90s. I became a fan of They Might Be Giants at the same time as I did REM, so that was a lot of fun. In college, I also did a radio show my senior year. I did 2 radio shows my senior year because we were able to get a new radio antenna that we needed to have like more people doing radio shows. So they gave one to pretty much everybody. So I got 2. And then I also, being a senior, and I was friends with the editor-in-chief, Tara, she gave me a column in the newspaper. So I got to write a column about whatever I felt like. So that was fun. And what else did I do? Oh, we made the Squirrel movie. I took a film class in the 90s at college, and we made the Squirrel movie, which got uploaded to YouTube in the aughts. We'll talk about that in a little bit. South Park, Beavis and Butthead, Batman animated series, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series, they all came out in the 90s. X-Files came out as well. And at college, we watched 90210 and Melrose Place in my junior year, we hung out in one of our rooms and watched it and made fun of it and stuff like that. We also did a drinking game to How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the animated thing. Every time you said who, you took a shot. That was fun. And then I watched X-Files because that came out in my dorm room. Also had people do that. They also was the release of the Stephen King limited series on network TV, It with Tim Curry, and then The Stand with Gary Sinise. We watched those as well. We created hot apple pie shots my junior year of college. It's you get a shot glass, you fill it with apple juice. Vodka, apple juice, and cinnamon, and you take the shot. So you get the cinnamon flavor first, and the apple juice flavor, and then the warmth of the vodka, and that's your hot apple pie. It's a fantastic one. Went to a dance with my junior year with a girl who liked me named Sarah. I liked her. She was also a history major, but I don't know, something about her I'm not quite sure that I was the biggest fan of at the time. And I knew she dug me, and we went to this dance, and it was great. And I had the opportunity that night that I probably could have banged her if I wanted to, because I think she was ready to go. I think she wanted to bang me that night, but she didn't say anything. And then I sort of forced her out. And then she called me like the next day and said, did I want to come over to her place to study? And me and the moron, I was like, no, I'm being fine here. And I was like, no, that was code for she wanted to fuck your brains out. So that didn't turn out okay. So I could have had sex then, but because I was stupid, I didn't. Blossom, Chris Rock, Grinch. We also did Secret Santa stuff with my friends. I had a good friend group from sophomore year through senior year, and they moved off campus senior year. So we had a lot of good senior year off-campus parties at their place, which was a lot of fun. Watched movies. They all got high most of the time. I never did, but it was cool. I had a single my senior year, which was basically the size of a closet, but it was great because at the time I had my girlfriend at the time, so I didn't have to deal with roommates or anything like that. And she came to my room, and we did it in my room a bunch of times, did all kinds of stuff in there. But I had a really cool setup in my TV VCR combo. I had cable, I had a computer, I had a refrigerator and shelves and air conditioning and heat. It was great, and it was a lot of fun. The 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game was created my junior year and I knew the guys who created it. They actually lived in the dorm room directly underneath my dorm room junior year when they created it. And I like to make the joke with them that I came up with the idea first. It leaked out through my head, through the floor, and into their minds. And they were the ones that became famous for it, because they were literally, when they came up with it, they were literally under my dorm room. Because they were on the lower level and I was up in the mid-level. I'm still kind of not friends, but acquaintances with one of the guys that created it. When I worked at Diamond in the aughts, I reconnected with him because he was working at a toy company and he was ordering stuff from us. And I was like, are you Dylan from Aubrey College? He's like, yeah, small world. I met a guy named Kevin who was the same age as I was. Literally, he was born on June 20th, 1973 also, which it's now 12:06 a.m. It's officially my birthday. I was born at 9 a.m., so I still got 9 hours to go for my official birthday. But yeah, there's that. I started, and I took some during the January mini semesters. I took a theater workshop, a UFO class, and a history of travel, which was a lot of fun. So when I was in my dorm room, when I was a solo, my single dorm room, we had a way where I could call our place called the Sub, which was the student-run sort of snack bar, and they would make Tombstone pizzas for delivery. And so I ordered at midnight or whatever, they'd come deliver me a nice Tombstone pizza. So that's just kind of a bunch of the stuff that. I was a Homicide extra. That's right. During that same year, I did 2 episodes of the TV show Homicide that filmed in Baltimore. I did that. I've told that story a million times too, but that was fun. And I did movie premieres for the radio station, so that was a lot of fun also. I came up with this trivia questions and got to watch movies 3 or 4 days before they came out, so that was a lot of fun. And then got some of the goodies that they were giving away at that time. I also started reading Stephen King at that time, so that was kind of a good. I had never really read him before that point. Make sure I didn't miss anything else. I think I got everything else there. So that was a lot of the good reasons why the 90s is my best reason. So obviously that's why I picked the 90s as my best year. Suncoast Pictures, another place at the Towson Town Center. The advent of being able to buy VCR tapes and then DVDs eventually. I would spend all my paychecks from Rainforest Cafe there every Tuesday. So that was fun. So some of the bad stuff about 90s, I got to move because I didn't mean to talk this long about the 90s. And I still got 3 more years to get through, decades to get through. So I had my first real relationship. I also had my first real heartache. She broke up with me after about 4 months of dating, saying she changed her mind about me. And thinking back now, retrospect, I can see why I kind of screwed things up a little bit because I still didn't quite know what I was doing, but I understand that, but still it was kind of hard. And it took me a little while to get over it. So I ended up becoming addicted to over-the-counter sleeping pills, which you could get easily over the counter. They say they're not addictive, but I was eating them every night because I couldn't sleep because I just couldn't stop being in pain from the heartache. It really hit me hard. It was my first real relationship. So I didn't know how to process it. So I would go to the grocery store and I would buy these, over the counter sort of sleeping aids, and I would eat one every night. And I did that for months. I mean, every night. It got to the point where if I tried not to do it, it was a horrible night. So one night, once I finally settled down, it was months after it had been almost doubled the time since we were together. And near the end of my senior year, I was like, you know what? I need to cut this out. So I cut it out, and then I got my life back on track. I did one more play. I had a 2-night stand with an actress in that play, which was great also. So I had more sex then also, and more sexual stuff going on at that point. Took a trip to Philly once also, but so I was able to get out of it, and so I don't have that anymore. Once I got out of college, I didn't have a life, I didn't have a car, and I was working, from 3 a.m. to 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then most of the time everybody was either working themselves or whatever, and by the time they wanted to go out, I had to go to bed. Really had no life. My dad had a really rough time in the 90s. So after he divorced his second wife, my first stepmom, he tried being an assistant principal, and it didn't quite work out. And there was just a woman who was just obsessed with him that kind of screwed his life and career up. And then he met my current stepmother, his third wife, excuse me. And there were still issues with that till they could get together. So he had a rough time. I lost both my grandparents on my mother's side within about 6 months of each other. I will talk more about that tomorrow because I'm going to talk about it on my show tomorrow, or later today, I should say, about 24 hours from now. I'll be working on my show probably. I will be doing memories of my birthday, and this is one. So we'll talk about that. But I did lose both my grandparents. Literally about 2 months after I got my car in September of 99, I got into a car accident. Actually, it might have been only one month, late October, early November. I got into a car accident. It took a month to get it repaired. And so I was without a car for over a month, which I literally had just gotten. Had my first hangovers, which I talked about. In the world, it was the OJ trial, which just took over everything. Phil Hartman was murdered. Bill Clinton was impeached for something so minuscule, but the Republicans need to find a way to get him out. Columbine happened in 1999, so that was a terrible school shooting. Princess Diana died in a terrible car accident. The Oklahoma City bombing also happened. And before the Browns moved to Baltimore, we became the Ravens. We had a shot to get one of the expansion teams in '94, and the NFL screwed us. But I had talked about that before. I'm not going to talk about that now because I don't have a lot of time. And we also had the first ever World Trade Center bombing before the big one in the aughts. We had this one, which hit in '92, I think. And then 1999 itself was such a great year. We had the whole Y2K stuff, but 99 was actually a very interesting year. So that's it for the 90s. So I talked about an hour on this one thing. That's why it's number one. I'm going to try to blow through these other ones, though, because I didn't want it to be too long, but it might end up being about 2 hours long anyway. My second best decade was the aughts, 2000 to 2009. This is going to blow your freaking mind. This almost was number one because of what I'm about to tell you, but due to the bad stuff, which we'll cover that real quick. 9/11, of course, happened in 2001, and that was a major psychological scar for the United States for the majority of that decade. It took President Obama to get us out of that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. After that, we had terror all over the place. About a few months after that, we had the anthrax scare in D.C., and then we had the Beltway sniper locally around here was killing people nearby here. One of the space shuttles blew up on landing, reentry. Hurricane Katrina absolutely destroyed New Orleans and turned, had terrible repercussions on people, particularly African Americans. And that was dropped by one of the worst presidents we ever had, George W. Bush. That's all on him. And that was also the reason why this was a shitty year. The 2000 election was absolutely rigged. The thing that changed it from Gore to W was Florida, and Florida's governor was W's brother, so there's little stinks to high heaven there. We had the Iraq War, which was an unnecessary war, and we had the Afghanistan War, which wasn't necessary because bin Laden, who bombed the World Trade Center, was from Afghanistan. We needed to do that. No war is ever good, but still, it was worthwhile. Except for the beginning in 2000 and a few years after that, the Baltimore Ravens were mediocre. Okay, they were decent, but they weren't spectacular. The Orioles reverted to their horribleness in the early 2000s, didn't really do much. Cal Ripken ended his streak and then his career there. We had money issues. We can talk about that in a little bit. I lost my grandmother on my dad's side, and my wife, we'll talk about in a second too. She lost a bunch of her grandparents during the aughts. Pluto was demoted in 2006, which pissed me off because I love Pluto. It's one of my favorite planets, and it still is. So that happened. Buffy the Vampire Slayer went downhill very quickly after the great season 5. So that happened in the aughts. I got out of comics again. So that kind of sucked a little bit. I ended up working at a self-storage facility for a limited time, and that was a horrible experience. And we had bad neighbors in our neighborhood, which made things kind of shitty. And there was something else that I thought I had in my head. But that was, the majority of sort of the shitty stuff about, 2000, the aughts. Let's talk about the good stuff in the aughts. And the great stuff about the great thing about the aughts is, and this is the most incredible thing ever, and it still blows my mind that this actually happened. My wife and I started dating in September of 2000. So we met and started dating in September of 2000. In July of 2001, not July, August of 2001, we moved in together in a great apartment up in the Hunt Valley, Cockeysville, Hunt Valley area. Loved the apartment experience I had. We had our 2 cats, Bonnie and Clyde, with us, and it was a great experience. We lived there from 2001 to 2004, and it was wonderful, fantastic. Saturday night date nights included going to church and then going out to eat after that so we could sleep in on Sundays. My wife was going for her master's at the time, so she was doing a lot of studying and sleeping a lot. So there would be days where I just could read my comics after we got into it for a while, but then I had to get out of them for a specific reason later in the aughts. Watch movies, play video games, whatever. It was great. It was so much great. It's a great neighborhood. It was a great area. And, we were living together, and, we had some good sex in there as well. My cousin lived with us for about a month because we had an extra bedroom. That was fun too. So we moved in together in August of 2001, proposed to her in July of 2002. We got married in October of 2003. We bought this house that I'm recording live from this show, bought this house in 2004, moved in then. 2006, our daughter appeared. 2007, both my wife and I were in a major situations when it came to our jobs. We were both sort of out of a job, and we had just had a 1 month old at that point, 2 to 3 month old. I'm sorry. I lost my job, and my wife had to shift her job. But right within about a month of each other, my wife got the job she's in now to this day, and I got the job that I'm in now to this day. That was in 2007. And so we were able to get our things back to normal a little bit. And then in 2009, and it was planned and we worked it out, we had our son. Oh, and in there also, after our wedding in 2003, we had our honeymoon in 2003 as well. So just think about that. From 2009, from 2000 to 2009, my wife and I met, dated, moved in together, got engaged, got married, went on a honeymoon, bought this house, had our daughter, got the jobs we're in now, had our son within this 1 decade. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Apartment life was fantastic. I loved living in the apartment. It was so much fun. It was great. My sister had her second son in 2001. So that was good. So I was uncle again for the second time. My dad got married to my current stepmom. They've been together now since 2007 as well. So they're still together. It was also a great time for fantasy and nerds to come into play, particularly in the movies. In the movies, we had in 2000, we had the X-Men. No, I'm sorry, X-Men was 99. We had Spider-Man movie, I think in 2001 or in 2000 or 2001. Then we had the Harry Potter and Sorcerer's Stone, the first film in the book series, because the book series was huge at that point. The fourth book just came out in 2000. So we had the first movie. And then about a month later, we had Lord of the Rings, the first one of that, Fellowship of the Ring. So my wife and I, who were big nerds and big geeks, we were in heaven with the comic book movies. And then we had sequels to Spider-Man. We had the sequels to the Harry Potter movies. We had sequels to Lord of the Rings. And then Star Wars decided, you know what? 1999, we had episode 1, episode 2, and episode 3 decided they were going to come out in the aughts as well, 2002 and 2005, I believe. We had those as well. And then, if I remember correctly, I believe that the MCU started in 2009 with Iron Man. So the tail end of it, we had that. We also had the J.J. Abrams Star Trek reboot, which was fantastic. We also had the Princess Diaries, which brought about the arrival of the luminous Anne Hathaway, which was fantastic as well. So it was just a great time and we had Hellboy and Blade and all this other stuff. So we had lots of comic book movies. And then I think Batman Begins came out in the aughts as well. So we had Nolan's Batman as well. We had Superman Returns. So we had lots of superhero movies. We had lots of fantasy, the 3 Lord of the Rings films, 4 of the Harry Potter movies. And then the Harry Potter books were still coming out. So the 4th book came out in 2000. The 5th book took about 3 years to come out. And then the 6th and 7th came out pretty quickly after that. We went to Barnes & Noble and did the midnight release parties and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. At that time, I was still working at Rainforest Cafe, but I was getting my hours cut, and we had just moved into the apartment together. So I needed to find another job. So I found this job at Diamond Comics. I was a comic book guy. So I guess maybe I didn't get out of comics too much. I did later in the year. That's what I did later on, because this was like 2002. So I was still in the comics at the time. So I got what appeared to be my dream job. I was a customer service rep at Diamond Comic Distributors. At the time, the only distributor of comic books in the world. And my account base was Sacramento, Los Angeles, and Seattle and Alaska. Not Seattle, Alaska. And then I had various and sundry other shops around the area. So my shift was 11 to 8. So it was a weird working shift for me. And I would come home at 5 since Diamond was literally only about 10 minutes from my apartment. I would come home at 5 and my wife was just coming home from work because she would go in early in the morning, and I would have my lunch, and she would be studying or getting her dinner ready, and then or getting our dinner ready or just snacking or whatever, and then I would work till 8, and then we would have dinner together. I think that's how it worked out. So that was when I started working at Diamond then, and then I eat because that was a real full-time job. I was making a ton more money than I was working at Rainforest Cafe. And then the radio station was starting to go downhill also. They lost the Ravens, so we weren't doing Ravens games anymore. We had a new manager who I didn't like. I liked Julie. She was great, and we lost her. And so we had this other one who wasn't a big fan. And we moved from Towson Commons to another smaller building where there are other radio stations where it just was not fun. So I said, nope, I'm done. So I quit that. So that was good. I ended up working there till about 2006. And I was a customer service rep for a good portion of that. Then I became a brand manager, which is what destroyed me on Diamond and destroyed my comic life as well, because I just couldn't stand it anymore. And I worked at a self-storage facility, which I talked about already. That was a shitty job. And then I got this Hanover job, which I was still at that point. But now we had kids. So I really couldn't spend a lot of money on comic books because we had daycare we had to pay for and stuff like that. So fun stuff a lot about that. My mom and my stepdad retired. So that was good so that was good. Well, not for my stepdad. He wanted to keep working, but they sort of forced him out. But my mom retired, and she was happy about that. She also, I think, got her college degree at that point as well, which was good too. The Baltimore Ravens won the Super Bowl in 2000. So that was great. Right when my wife and I started dating, they won the Super Bowl. So that was we were together during that run, which was great. We watched the Super Bowl at my mom's house when they won it. That was fantastic. My sister moved into the house that she is still living in at this point in the aughts as well. It's a nice house in Virginia. It was built just directly for them. They're the only people who have lived in that house. So that's really cool. Once I started dating my wife and getting married and stuff like that, I got involved with all her stuff there. She has 2 other sisters. Both of her sisters also got married in the aughts. And both of her sisters also had kids in the aughts as well, because they're all within the same age group. Her youngest sister had twins, which were born in 2009, same year as my son. And the middle sister had a daughter that was born 1 week literally before my daughter, and then a son that came out about a year and a half later. So that was that. And they all got married, and they all had kids in the same time frame we did as well. So that was kind of cool. So we did a lot more stuff together with her family. So when we started before kids and before marriage, we would go to the Rehoboth Beach and Bethany Beach and get a house down there, and that'd be our vacation. But then when the family started to expand even more, we had to find a bigger area. So we started going to the Outer Banks in the aughts, and we did that through the teens. So that was a fun little time as well. So we did a lot of that. So doing like that. We got newish cars. I got my first car was still a thing till the teens. So I still had my car, but my wife had her Jeep, but she had to get a car. So she got one. So we had kind of a newish car there. I think she got that from her grandmother. President Obama was elected president in 2008 and turned the world around, and that was fantastic. The rise of the internet started really coming to its own in the aughts. The rise of social media, Facebook and MySpace and all that started really popping up in the aughts as well. Doctor Who returns in 2004, 2005, and my wife and I started watching that. We also watched a lot of HGTV and Leverage and Food Network and Iron Chef, stuff like that. My cousin Amanda and my cousin Jenny both got married in the aughts as well. Moved up here to Reisterstown, discovered how much we love the place. Bill Bateman's was our go-to restaurant. That shut down in 2019, but we went there. It was there. We moved up here in 2004, and it was still going on. During this time, my dad and I started going to yearly Ravens games. We go to one game every year, and then my sister and my wife, who were both Redskins fans at the time, they would go to a Redskins game together too, so that was good. We also went to the first ever playoff game in Baltimore in New Year's Eve 2000, which was a great day for me, great 2000 to 2001. So we went to the Ravens playoff game, first ever playoff game. They beat the Broncos. And then I went to the Giant Hotel that was across the street from the Inner Harbor, or from Harbor Place, because my wife and her roommate and her roommate's boyfriend, we were going to get hotel rooms there to watch the fireworks for New Year's Eve downtown the city. We went to Cheesecake Factory. There was a parade, and then we were there for 4th of July, which is great. So, not for New Year's Eve. So I spent New Year's Eve in Baltimore City for the first time ever, and then went back to our apartment, to our hotel rooms. And then so about 3 a.m. on January 1st, 2001, my wife and I had sex. And then about 7:30 in the morning, my wife and I had sex. And then about 11 o'clock, we had sex. And then about 3 o'clock, we had sex. And then about 7 or 8 o'clock at night, we had sex. So we had a lot of sex on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2001. So that was great. And that was before we moved in together also. So that was amazing too. My wife and I also went on one of our first ever trips to Ocean City, Maryland, in about a month or two after we started dating. And then we went to Washington about 4 or 5 months after we started dating, where my wife was contemplating moving to Wisconsin to finish up her master's, because her teacher was moving to Wisconsin. And so she didn't know what was going to happen with that. So I said, I would move with you if you need to, but she ended up getting a better job. We played softball for McCormick at that time in the aughts as well. That was fun. I got into fantasy football and baseball for the first time, and even a little bit of hockey. So that was good. We created the Society to Kick Josh Ridgway in the balls, which is something fun we did at Hanover, where we showed videos of us kicking this dude in the balls. Still fun to watch them. When I worked at Diamond, I had to go travel to 3 conventions. One was at Long Beach, California. One was in Boston, Massachusetts, and one was in Philadelphia. So that was great, being able to travel on the company dime. That was really cool. And being out for a whole week was really cool too. It was 6 months. I thought it was longer. It was only about a month. No, I don't think that's true. Bonnie and Clyde honeymoon. Honeymoon was in San Francisco. That was great. Got to touch the Lombardi Trophy because at the time when they won the Super Bowl in 2000, the radio station was still doing the broadcast, so we did that as well. And I got to wear a Super Bowl ring, which was really cool too. So that's some of the good stuff that I remember from the 2000s. I already talked about the bad stuff, so it's very, as I said, very close between 1990 and 2000. But just the fact that my wife and I's entire life spanned that entire decade. All right, so let's see if I can blow through this in the next 15 minutes. This is the 1980s, my third best one. I was age 7 to 16, so I don't remember a lot about it, but there's some good stuff I remember about. But the 80s, everybody remembers the 80s, the music, the movies. I didn't have any real responsibilities. My first ever jobs, I was a paper boy, worked at a comic book store for a summer, and it was long for about a year. And then I think I started working at the grocery store in 89, I think. So it was like that. I did some theater in high school. I went to high school then. So the 80s, I was my whole schooling. So elementary, middle, and high school. I did some theater in high school in the 80s. Played outside with other kids in the neighborhood. We did baseball. We did capture the flag. We did kick the can. We also did stupid stuff like, hey, let's be peeping Toms. And we'd go around to people's houses at night and look in their windows. Nobody ever saw us. And we also got ourselves involved in Mischief Night, which was a big thing back in the 80s also. Day before Halloween, we would wake up on Halloween morning and there would be like shaving cream and toilet paper and all kinds of stuff. But then you got to the ones that were really physical, like someone tried to steal my dad's car, but ended up spraying it with spray paint. Spray painted the little man we have on our thing as well. As much stuff as well. So that was crazy. Learned how to ride a bike, rode bikes around here. Also was riding my big wheels at the time. I played rec league baseball and basketball. My dad was my coach. Played with action figures, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Star Wars, stuff like that. Watched a lot of Saturday morning cartoons and watched a lot of afternoon cartoons. We got cable for the first time that included HBO, so got to watch a lot of movies on HBO and stuff on HBO, and it was one of the first families to get cable. Got our first VCR and videotapes. Our first videotape was Beverly Hills Cop and also the Eddie Murphy Saturday Night Live stuff, so those were cool. The rise of arcade games start off in arcades where you would go and play arcade games. My dad would even play arcade games with me also. And then eventually they came up with the home consoles and we got some of those during the 80s and played with those. The Space Shuttle debuted during the 1980s. Voyager 2 made major discoveries around Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, including the first shots ever of Uranus and Neptune. Had my first crushes. 5th grade, there was a girl named Mary who really, really liked me, but I was too naive and stupid to reciprocate. And then when I went to middle school and I started getting into puberty and I saw her, I was like, my God, you were a moron because she's hot. There was a girl named Maureen who, when my sister also did some softball rec league, and my dad was coach of that, so we had to go to that also. Her sister, I guess, was also playing there, so we pretended to be married. I remember her, and that was kind of a first crush also. Then in high school, I had my biggest crush on my freshman year was to a girl named Andy, who I sat next to in English class, and my 8th class, we did 9 classes. This was my 8th class, and I walked her to her 9th period class. But we sang each other the whole year. That was a lot of fun. And then she blew me off the rest of the year, and I never got the nerve up to ask her out. But she had a great singing voice. But I found out later on down the line she was actually kind of a bitch down the line. And also in high school, I could have had a steady girlfriend too, because my friend Joanna found out she had a huge crush on me. And I didn't reciprocate that either because I was stupid again. And then 7th grade, there was a girl named Carrie who wanted to do a roller skating thing with me, and she liked me at the time, so we did the roller skating thing, but again, did not reciprocate anything because I was stupid. There was also a video store up the street from us that was run by a Asian family, and their daughter was hot. And I think she kind of liked me, but I just never did anything about it. I said, oh, that would have been great also because she was hot. Let's see what else. Trick or treat, did lots of trick or treating during that time, costumes, stuff like that. New Year's Eve was great. My friend Craig, his older brother Chris, was in the University of Maryland marching band, and so on New Year's Eve they would have a big party in Craig's basement with his marching band buddies, and then at midnight they would come out drunk with their instruments and would play Old Lang Syne, and then would do a parade through our neighborhood from about midnight till about 1 a.m. and people would come out of their houses and they would play songs. It was fun. It became a big parade. People were coming out of their houses because everyone stays awake, for midnight. They would come out and we just were walking through the neighborhood. It was so much fun. Our vacations were in Ocean City, New Jersey, where my aunt, uncle, and my cousins lived. I even spent a summer, a week up there just with them by myself, which was a lot of fun also. I'm going to talk about more about the Chicago Comic-Con I went to in the 80s. That was a birthday thing that I have a story about. We'll talk about that on my show later today. I started doing Ocean City, Maryland as well in the 1980s too. Did some crabbing at the time. Never done that before. Fifth grade was so much fun. I had a blast in fifth grade. It was probably my favorite school years. Comic books were huge. The Crisis on Infinite Earths, Dark Knight Returns, John Byrne taking over the Superman, Justice League International by Giffen and DeMatteis, the Spider-Man with the Death of Gene DeWolf, and the Craven's Last Hunt were also fantastic as well. So all kinds of great comic book stuff. I was a safety in elementary school, which means basically I would help kids cross the street and make sure they would not run down the steps and stuff like that. And I was a safety with Ian, my friend Ian, and we were in this back staircase that nobody ever used. So it was easy, but I was actually going to do it. 1980 was the Miracle on Ice when a scrappy young American hockey team during the Olympics took out a professional Russian hockey team that led them to the gold medal game in the 1980 Olympics. Watched that live at First and St. Stephen's. It was a church my mom used to go to and work at when she had time. And it was a spaghetti dinner that night, so we were prepping for it, and they had the TV on, and I had to go with her because my mom was watching me at the time, so that was good. Scholastic Books, where you order books from that and you get them in. Those were always great. Going to the library, though up in Towson was really fun getting books out of there too. I drew cartoons and comic books. Created a character called Rick. A bunch of other stuff as well. Austin was another one I created, so I did a lot of that. I wrote stories, including one about a chipmunk called Chippy the Chipmunk that my mom typed out for me and put in a folder and stapled and stuff like that. So it was like a real book. We went camping at Cohen's Gap a bunch of times. That was interesting. I was in Ocean City, New Jersey when Live Aid happened, which was a huge thing. And also I was up at Cohen's Gap when Hands Across America happened, which was also a huge thing. Other great cartoons at the time, the influx of anime, including Robotech and Voltron, as well as G.I. Joe and Transformer cartoons were great too. The 1989 Orioles were a surprise because the 1988 Orioles were shitty. I'll talk about them in a second. Made it all the way to the final game of the season and ended up losing it. Didn't get to the playoffs. They did win the World Series in 1983, and I do remember that as well. Michael Jackson's Thriller came out in the 80s. I also had a record player in my room, and I played a bunch of albums, including Thriller. The week I spent up in Ocean City with my cousins and my aunt and uncle, they had a friend across the street from them who had a saltwater swimming pool. Never been in that, but went in that before. And then the hamburger cake, which is not a cake made out of hamburger, but it's a cake that looks like a hamburger. So it's got chocolate cake in a circle as the hamburger things, vanilla cake as the rolls, and you put icing for mustard and ketchup for strawberry stuff for the ketchup and green relish. You put stuff. So it was really, really cool. Let's see, anything else? There's probably a bunch of other stuff I'm missing in the 1980s. The 80s were fine, but as I said, it's up higher. It's third of four because I don't remember a lot of it. And also because of the bad stuff, which I'll tell you about in a second. But the 80s was a fun time, but I honestly couldn't tell you. I remember bits and pieces of the 80s. I did go to movie theaters. I did see some classic movies in movie theaters like Back to the Future and Ghostbusters. I literally saw the movie theaters. Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, saw them all as well. And other stuff as well. And took a trip to, as I told you earlier, to Seattle, Vancouver, Victoria Island, San Francisco, and went up to Boston a couple times. That was fun. So did a lot of traveling then. Went to Los Angeles, had never been there before. Universal Studios used to do a little play, and they'd take people from the audience and they would film them, and then they would splice it together into a videotape. I got to play a Blues Brother, which was cool. That was a lot of fun. I said there's probably a lot of other stuff I'm missing, but that's just got my first cat ever, Gypsy, and then she died And then we got Gracie, which is cool. Stacy worked at a snowball stand, so I worked with her a little bit. My sister worked at a snowball stand. I worked with her a little bit. So that was kind of neat to see how the snowball stand was done. And then my mom worked at a Christmas tree stand for the church, and I worked with her selling Christmas trees also. That was a lot of fun too. And is there anything else from the 1980s? Nope. Now the bad of the 1980s. The biggest thing that made the 1980s not a great decade for me was I was bullied mercilessly my entire time in school and did not break the cycle until my junior year of high school. But up to that point, I was bullied incessantly, consistently, and it kind of fucked me up and turned me into the guy that I am now. I've learned things. I've gotten over it. So not over it, but I've adjusted my feelings on it. But it's something that I will never forget, and I had to go through. So that was the biggest thing about why I didn't like the 80s. My parents splitting up was not as big of a deal as it was for my sister. It was a huge deal for my sister. It wasn't a big deal for me. They just were just unhappy, and they did a great job of doing it. So they made sure that they didn't have to move us. We didn't have to move from house to house. They kept us at the house, and they were the ones that rotated in and out. And they never argued in front of us, and they were very cordial, and they're still very friendly and very cordial to this day. When my grandmother died in the 90s, my dad came down and was at the wake and the funeral for her. And then when my grandpa died, same thing. And then when my dad's mother, my grandmother, died in the aughts, my mom came to that as well. As you know, she lost other family members. My dad lost other family members. My mom came to those as well. So, and they're still, as I said, they're a lot better now, not married. And they still converse, and whenever we all get together, it's fun having them sit down. They always seem to catch up a little bit, which is really cool. And my stepmother now actually likes my mom as well. My mom likes her as well, likes her better than the first stepmom, for obvious reasons. My parents, so the Challenger disaster, which is a huge, big thing for us in 1986. It happened. I didn't actually happen to see it because I was at lunch when it happened, but there were people, friends of mine, that did see it live when they were watching it because a teacher was going up into the space shuttle to watch it explode live. Fucks you up. And so they came and told us about it. We thought they were lying, so we were joking about it until we found out that it was real. Reagan was shot in the early 80s, didn't die. AIDS became a huge thing also, killing, not just started off by killing gay people, but then started affecting regular people as well. Again, limited to what I could do or watch because I was still young, so I had to abide by parents. I had to eat what they put in front of me, even though I didn't like a lot of it. I could only do so much, had bedtimes. I had to get my homework done. So I had to stop watching TV at a certain time, had to go, just do stuff that I was not a fan of. I shattered my front teeth. Still there. In fifth grade, I believe, fourth or fifth grade, in the 80s. We were playing dodgeball, and the gym floor was hard, marble almost. And it's not quite marble, but it was like that. It was a really hard surface. We were playing dodgeball, and I was going after this one ball. Didn't see this guy named Richard bend down, and I tripped over him, and bam, shattered these front teeth right here. I had to get a quick repair job, and the repair job didn't hold. I never got caps on them because they're expensive. My insurance wouldn't cover it, so I still have the gash and stuff like that. Had that happen. The 1988 Orioles were a disaster. They started the season 0-21. I think another team has had a worse. I think they were 0-28. There was another team that started the season 0-28. But for the longest time, the Orioles in 1988 started 0-21, and it was embarrassment for us. And we just were a lousy team that year. But then 89 came, and we became a great team. So go figure. And then the Baltimore Colts moved away in 83 to Indianapolis, and we did not get a football team back until 96. So we had 13 years without football, which sucks for a football town. So that's it for the 80s. So I got just a real quick look at the last of my decades, the 10s, 2010 to 2019. Don't have a lot on here because, let's face facts, it was kind of a shitty decade as well. There's some good stuff that happened to it. The Ravens won the Super Bowl again in 2012, so that was great. The Orioles were okay. They got a little bit better in the 10s, but still didn't go to World Series or go to many playoff games. President Obama was reelected again, so that was great until the 2016 election when the Orange Nightmare pedophile cheated with the Russians and beat Hillary Clinton, who had 3 million more votes than him, but lost due to the stupid, outdated electoral college. And the less we talk about that, the better. But we still had President Obama for a good portion of it. The MCU flourished during that time. I think it started in 2009, but it really hit its stride in that decade, releasing all of the good movies leading up to Infinity War and Endgame. And so we had all that going on. We had new cars multiple times during this period. The Snark Alex were created. The history of Dylan Knows, which I'll talk about in September when I reiterate my 13-year, but I'll give a quick thing. Sci-Fi Channel used to do these Saturday night B movies like Sharknado and, just these just awful, terrible, B movies, but they were funny and they were fun to watch. And Twitter was starting to really be a big thing. So my wife and I would sit down Saturday night after the kids were in bed, and it's like sort of our date thing. So we'd sit on our phones and Twitter and tweet out these B movies that we were laughing our asses off about how bad they are. And we found a group of people who were doing the same thing as we are, and we were retweeting and talking to them and commenting, and then we became solid friends. So every Saturday we did this. So we started building a group, called ourselves the Snark Alex. We helped to get these shows to trending by ourselves on Twitter, and that in turn created Snark Alex Radio, which was a sort of early sort of podcasting thing that we used to do. I wasn't on every episode, but they brought me and my wife into multiple episodes for the few years that they did it. And we had Snark Fest where we would get together and actually meet face to face and hang out, see if we could get along, not just online, but in person. And we did. And then with the height of Snark Alex Radio being fantastic, we decided to expand it. And one of the expansions was Dylan Knows. And I'm still the only one left, I think, because I haven't seen any of the other shows that were spun off of that pop up recently. But I'm still going strong. But the Snark Alex became a big thing. And then my wife also got a chance to write for a website because one of our Snark Alex was friends with somebody who ran a sci-fi website. And my wife ended up reviewing a couple of the other. We didn't just watch the sci-fi B movies, but we also watched some of the shows they did also with the Snark Alex as well. And my wife would come down, like Being Human was one of them as well. And I forget the dystopian future one. She would write reviews of them, and she's a great writer, and so that was a lot of fun for her. Streaming started really rising at this point, making cable obsolete, particularly the last half of the teens. Pluto was rejected as a planet in 2006, but about 2015, they got their first look at it, and holy shit, is it a gorgeous planet, and there's so much going on. And now they're like, oh. We continue to do our Outer Banks vacations, which are still very good. We could not afford to have 2 kids in daycare. So in 2010 to 2011, my mom, who is now retired, would stay at home with my son during that year and a half, where they bonded really good. My son and my mother are still very, very close to this day. They bonded when they were younger, and then when he was old enough, about a year and a half after this, and my daughter had moved up to a cheaper level in daycare, we were able to put him into daycare, and we were able to afford it at that point. So thank you to my mom for doing that for us. And then eventually, because it's 10 years, the kids were made their way into school, and they made their way through elementary and into a little bit of middle school by the time the decade ended. So that was good. I did more off-site projects for my work, which was kind of interesting that I got to do. different things. And we also moved our warehouse from a nice, cozy little place to now a more sort of antiseptic, not really fun place anymore. So it's become gone downhill since 2011 for the most part. Still, it's a job and it's good. It's fine. 2016 saw the rise of Pokemon Go, which my wife and I play to this day, and is actually Community Day. And we're going to do that as part of my birthday celebration. So Community Day is today, about 2 o'clock. So about 12, 13, 14 hours from now, something like that, will be the beginning of Frigibac's Community Day. And so my wife and I are going to go out and do that as my part of my birthday celebration. I'm going to do something with my son in the morning, my wife in the afternoon, and my daughter at night. So that'll be fun. The kids started Scouts and became a big part of their lives. And my wife really found her niche in that as well, becoming a big part of that as well. We went to the library a lot more. We had a local library up here in Reisterstown. We also had the Owings Mills one. So we started doing that a lot more with the kids. My squirrel movie that I did with my friends from college, we finally uploaded it to YouTube. So that was now available on YouTube during this decade. One of my favorite website shows, The Guild, popped up and premiered during this decade as well. Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures, which we watched also, was big and prevalent during this decade as well. We got Jinx. We lost our kitties, other Bonnie and Clyde, but we got Jinx, and we had Jinx for a long time here. And that's really kind of about it. When it comes to the teens, as I said, not a lot of really exciting stuff, but still, some interesting stuff. The bad stuff, I was demoted multiple times at my job, from being a manager to being a production manager, to being a warehouse manager, to being an AOC manager. So I kept getting demoted. And then 2020, just the shit hit the fan with COVID. We're not going to talk about that because it's not, but it was just the beginning of the end happened around 2017, 2018, when they started demoting me, which was not fun. The rise of the Tea Party and MAGA started in this decade as well. The rise of the pedo and his fascist beliefs came in here as well during this decade. Had lots and lots of car issues, lot of money issues. We had, my wife had a miscarriage. We were going to have 3 children, but she had a miscarriage during this decade, on the same day that she lost her grandmother, which was horrible. Bill Bateman's, our go-to restaurant that we started going to in 2004, closed in 2019. Lost my stepdad, Roger. He passed away due to cancer. I forgot one of the good things is my stepbrother Ryan got married in Rhode Island in this decade as well. 2016 had a huge amount of celebrity deaths, big ones, that I did a whole show of Dylan Knows just about the celebrity deaths. The Snyderverse rose in this decade, which is an absolute shit show. Had a car accident early on in 2000, the same day that my wife's grandmother died. We had this car accident and totaled my Honda, which after I had just put like $2,500 worth of, maybe $2,800 worth of repairs into it, because it was past 100,000 miles, and it said it would last another 100,000 miles. And literally about a month later, I got into a car accident where the people said it's totaled. You have to get it. So we had to buy a new car. Bought our van, which turned out to be a lemon, caused more issues. And then it was just a lot of car issues, a lot of money issues. We had 2 blizzards hit us back to back around the early part of the 2010, 2011 era. We were up here in Reisterstown. We were ground zero for it. So we got, by the time it was all over with, we got close to like 60 some inches of snow, and it lingered all the way through to April. So we had lots of issues with that. And then after the storms happened, and during this horrible winter where the snow was still all over the ground for the whole winter, a water main broke that was under a pond, in the woods, and they couldn't find. It took them a couple days to find it. We didn't have water for 6 days. It took them a couple days to find the pipe burst. Then they had to drain the lake it was under, dig it up, and build a roadway so they get their trucks into through the woods to repair it and leave it. So it took 6 days to repair this water main break. So that was another reason why the teens were terrible. It was just in general, just an awful time period. All right, I am finally done. So to reiterate, the best decades for me, number one's 90s, the 90s. Number two, very close second, is the 2000s, the aughts. Number three is the 1980s, decade of the 80s. And number four is the teens. That's it. All right, it is 12:57 a.m. on June 20th. It is officially my birthday. I will be doing my show Dylan Knows later today. As I said, roughly about 12 hours from now, I'll be done the episode probably. So roughly about 10 hours, I'll be starting this new episode of Dylan Knows. So come back for that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for humoring me with this. And we'll see you later. Thanks a lot. Bye.